Joining us now to break down the election results and talk about what happens next, Washington State Democratic Party Chair Tina Podlodowski and Washington State Republican Party Executive Director Kaitlin Vintertun. Thanks so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you.
So let's talk about that 8th district. So much money, so much attention on that particular race. There was polling back and forth. It looked 50-50. Why do you think you saw the outcome in the 8th that we did?
Well, I think everything we saw in the 8th sort of pointed to women being the key to the 8th and the suburban aspects of the district. That's where the bulk of the population lays in the 8th district. And for those particular voters, Dr. Schreier really presented a contrast. She was all about getting health care fixed, and it's something that everyone is thinking about for their families. But more than that, she's looking at prioritizing other aspects of the district too, as well as agricultural issues. She didn't talk about it in that last segment, but tariffs have been a big thing for her, thinking about what's happening with our cherry and apple farmers. So those are issues that she'll look at, but those suburban aspects of the district really came home for Kim Schreier.
So in the 8th Congressional District, we always knew that this was going to be a tough race in a year that was always expected to be harder for Republicans. Midterms always are for the party that's holding the White House. I think money was a huge factor in this race. At the end of the day, I think it's about $25 million was spent in the 8th Congressional District, and actually Dino Rossi was outspent 2-1. We saw negative ads against Dino starting earlier than you'd see normally in a campaign throughout the summer. And so there was a lot of money spent there. Michael Bloomberg himself spent $3 million in that district. And I think that that kind of money in a race like this is going to have a huge impact.
There is a lot of money across both sides, and what's interesting is House Democrats are now talking about bringing forward an ethics bill as one of their first pieces of legislation. I mean, what do you think that looks like next cycle?
Well, I think a lot of ethics issues will come into play, right? We'll see what happens in terms of the Mueller investigation. We'll certainly want to look at what's happening around elections and getting ourselves ready for the 2020 presidential election and Russian interference in the past election. So I think many of those issues will come into play. I'd love it if we could find a bipartisan way to do campaign finance reform. There's obviously far too much money in politics. Citizens United, a decision that certainly impacted that. It's one that Democrats talk about a lot. I'd love to see Republicans also be on the same page, and let's take that money out of politics.
Certainly a bipartisan ethics bill makes sense. I think everyone wants to have our politics as clean as possible. I think there's certainly a worry that with Democrats in control of the House, it could turn into nothing more than a political witch hunt. So I hope that that they are sincere in their efforts. I know the 8th Congressional District, like I said, that's a swing district, and it's not a far left-leaning district. And I think that especially that district will be turned off if something is so solely political with political motivations. And so I think that Dr. Schreier is going to have to think about who she's representing when she's there and not play into those party lines.
Which was Congressman Reichert's advice as well. Let's look at some of the state races where we are still counting ballots. That includes the 26th legislative district, includes parts of Kitsap and Pierce County. We've had the lead going back and forth in this one, a few different swaps, but Emily Randall, the Democrat, is currently up with ballots still being counted. And then the 42nd is also very close. This one likely headed to a recount. So overall, at this point, when you take all the races into consideration, Democrats in Washington picking up at least 2 seats in the state Senate, with those last races we showed you still too close to call. And then turning to the House, Democrats are poised to pick up somewhere around 7 seats, it looks like, with some races also still too close to call, still being counted. What are your takeaways here?
So I think that this was, as I said before, always going to be a little bit tougher of an election for Republicans, and we've seen that, but it wasn't a big blue wave. I don't think anything was totally unexpected. Actually, coming out of the primary, Democrats were in a position to take 18 seats, I believe. Republicans in currently Republican-held seats were under 50% in 18. In a top 2 primary system, the primary winner goes on to win the general 93% of the time. So we're going from 18 to about half that. That's actually pretty remarkable. It's a remarkable comeback that we don't see very often. It's historic.
So I think what you saw was a Republican Party that fielded old candidates and old ideas in this cycle. When you have Susan Hutchison running as your Senate candidate, when you have Dino Rossi losing for the 4th time to a woman in a race, either statewide or a congressional race, you really are putting old ideas out there. For Democrats, if you take a look at the difference in our candidates and what happened in those districts, we went after tough swing districts and did the work over the course of the last year or so to make sure we were organizing in each and every one of them. And it really paid off. Mona Doss winning in the 47th district against Joe Fain, another example of that. But we have great women who have come into office, women who are incredibly diverse, other diverse candidates as well. Now women are in the majority in the state house in Washington state, thanks to the Democrats that were elected. Women are leading in the state Senate as well. And again, a whole different set of candidates. Emily's now up by 88 votes in the race in the 26th. We think Emily Randall is going to be the senator there. And I do think in the 42nd, we'll be fighting it out at the canvass board, seeing what happens with the last votes that are there left to count. But for Democrats, we built a floor, a new floor, after 10 years of not really taking the entire state seriously. So we're here to expand on that floor. In every single county in the state, Democrats did at least 6% better than they did in the presidential year, and some by way more than that. We're going to keep building on that in 2019 in local races, and we'll be back to win those districts in 2020.
Thank you. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you.
To be continued.
To be continued.